gold statue that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. But whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into a furnace of blazing fire. Therefore, when all the people heard the sound of the horn, flute, lyre, harp, and every kind of music, people of every nation and language fell down and worshipped the gold statue that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Some Chaldeans took this occasion to come forward and maliciously accuse the Jews. They said to the king Nebuchadnezzar, "May the king live forever. You as king have issued a decree that everyone whose heart who hear the sound of the horn, flute, harp, drum, every kind of music must fall down and worship the gold statue. Whoever does not fall down and worship will be thrown into the furnace of blazing fire. There are some of Jews you have appointed to manage the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men have ignored you, the king. They do not serve your gods or worship the gold statue you have set up." Then in a furious rage, Nebuchadnezzar gave order to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So these men were brought before the king. Nebuchadnezzar asked them, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, is it true that you don't serve my God or worship the gold statue I have set up? Now, if you are ready when you hear the sound of horn, flute, lyre, drum, and every kind of music, fall down and worship the statue I made. But if you don't worship it, you will immediately be thrown into the furnace of blazing fire. And who is the God who can rescue you from my power?" Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego pled to the king, "Nebuchadnezzar, we don't need to give you an answer to this question. If the God we serve exists, then he can rescue us from the furnace of blazing fire, and he can rescue us from the power of you, the king. But even if he does not rescue us, we want you as king to know that we will serve our God or worship the gold statue you set up." Then Nebuchadnezzar was filled with rage, and the expression on his face changed toward Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He gave orders to heat the furnace 7 times more than as customary. And he commanded some of the best soldiers in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the furnace of blazing fire. So these men in these trousers, robes, head covering, and other clothes were tied up and thrown into the furnace of blazing fire. Since the king's command was no urgent and the furnace extremely hot, the raging flames killed those men who carried up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell bound into the furnace of blazing fire, harmed, and the 4th looks like a son. Oh, is that the one? I'm missing something. Then King Nebuchadnezzar jumped up in alarm. He said to his advisors, "Didn't we throw these 3 men bound into the fire?" "Yes, of course, Your Majesty," they replied to the king. He exclaimed, "Look, I see 4 men not tied, walking around in the fire unharmed. And the 4th looks like a son of the gods." Nebuchadnezzar then approached the door of the furnace of blazing fire and called, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, "You servants of the Most High God, come out." So Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego came out of the fire. When the satraps, prefects, and governors and the king's advisor gathered around, they saw the fire had no effect on the bodies of these 3 men. Not a hair of their heads was singed. Their robes were unaffected, and this was no smell of fire on them. Nebuchadnezzar exclaimed, "Praise to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He sent his angel and rescued his servants who trusted in him. They violated the king's command and risked their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own God. Therefore, I issue a decree that anyone of any people, nation, or language who says anything offensive against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego will be torn limbs to his house, made a garbage dump. For there is no other God who is able to deliver like this." Then the king rewarded Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. Chapter 4. So I am done for today.
That's okay.
Yeah? Until when are you going to stay?
I'm just filling in whatever holes. I'm off today, so I'm just filling
Oh,
in
okay.
whatever's needed.
Okay. Thank you, Tom.
Pastor will probably come in after I get done.
Oh,
Thank you so
oh,
much.
you're welcome.
Very good reading.
I can't stop reading. I wanted to know what happened. Okay, thank you. I'll be, until when is this reading? Until we finish? Because I put my name there, but only once, so I'm gonna put it like Friday, Saturday, same time, 12 to 22.
Chapter 4, right? Chapter 4. King Nebuchadnezzar, to those of every people, nation, and language who live on the whole earth, may your prosperity increase. I am pleased to tell you about the miracles and wonders the Most High God has done for me. How great are his miracles and how mighty his wonders. His kingdom is an eternal kingdom and has dominion is from generation to generation. Nebuchadnezzar was at ease in my house and flourished in my palace. I had a dream, and it frightened me. While in my bed, the images and visions in my mind alarmed me. So I issued a decree to bring all the wise men of Babylon to me in order that they might make the dream's interpretation known to me. When the magicians, mediums, and Chaldeans and diviners came in, I told them a dream, but they could not make its interpretation known to me. Finally, Daniel, named Belteshazzar after the name of my God, and the spirit of the holy gods is in him, came before me, and I told him the dream. Belteshazzar, head of the magicians, because I know that you have the spirit of the holy gods, and that no mystery puzzles you. Explain to me the visions of my dream that I saw in its interpretation. The visions of my mind as I was lying in bed, I saw this. There was a tree in the middle of the earth, and it was very tall. The tree grew large and strong. Its top reached to the sky, and it was visible to the ends of the earth. Its leaves were beautiful. Its fruit was abundant, and on it was food for all. Wild animals found shelter under it. The birds of the sky lived in its branches, and every creature was fed from it. As I was lying in my bed, I also saw in the vision of my mind a watcher, a holy one, coming down from heaven. He called out loudly, "Cut down the tree and chop off its branches, strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the animals flee from under it and the birds from its branches. But leave the stump with its roots in the ground, and with a band of iron and bronze around it. It is tender grass of the field. Let him be drenched with dew from the sky and share the plants of the earth with the animals. Let his mind be changed from that of a human, and let him be given the mind of an animal for 7 periods of time. This word is by decree of the watchers, and the decision is by the command from the holy ones. This is so that the living will know that the Most High is ruler over human kingdoms. He gives them to anyone who he wants, and sets the lowliest of people over them. This is the dream that I, King Nebuchadnezzar, had. Now Belteshazzar, tell me the interpretation, because none of these wise men of my kingdom can make the interpretation known to me. But you can, because you have the spirit of the holy gods. Then Daniel, whose name is Belteshazzar, was stunned for a moment, and his thoughts alarmed him. The king said, Belteshazzar, don't let the dream or its interpretation alarm you. Belteshazzar answered, my lord, may the dream apply to those who hate you, and its interpretation to your enemies. The tree you saw, which grew large and strong, whose top reached to the sky, and it was visible to the whole earth, and whose leaves were beautiful, and the fruit abundant, and on it was food for all under it, and the wild animals lived, and in its branches the birds of the sky lived. The tree is you, your majesty, for you have become great and strong. Your greatness has grown, even reaches the sky, and your dominion extends to the end of the earth. The king saw a watcher, a holy one, coming down from heaven and saying, cut down the tree and destroy it, but have the stump with its roots in the ground, and with a band of iron bronze around it. And the tender grass of the field, let him be drenched with dew from the sky, and share food with the wild animals for 7 periods of time. This interpretation, your majesty, and this is a decree from the Most High that has been issued against my lord the king. You will be driven away from people to live with the wild animals. You will feed on grass like cattle, and be drenched with dew from the sky for 7 periods of time, and to acknowledge that the Most High is ruler over human kingdoms and gives them to anyone he wants. As for the command to leave the tree stump with its roots, your kingdom will be restored to you as soon as you acknowledge the heavens rule. Therefore may my advice seem good to you, my king. Separate yourself from your sins by doing what is right, and from your injustice by showing mercy to the needy. Perhaps there will be an extension of your prosperity. All this happened to King Nebuchadnezzar at the end of 12 months, as he was walking on the roof of the royal palace in Babylon. The king exclaimed, is this not Babylon the Great that I have built to be royal residence for my vast power and for my majestic glory? While the words were still in the king's mouth, a voice came from heaven. King Nebuchadnezzar, to you is a declare that the kingdom has departed from you. You will be driven away from the people to live with the wild animals, and you will feed on the grass like cattle for 7 periods of time, until you acknowledge that the Most High is ruler over human kingdoms, and he gives them to anyone he wants. At that moment, the message against Nebuchadnezzar was fulfilled. He was driven away from the people. He ate grass like cattle, and his body was drenched with dew from the sky until the hair grew like eagle's feathers, and his nails like birds' claws. But at the end of those days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, looked up to heaven, and my sanity returned to me. Then I praised the Most High and honored and glorified him who lives forever. For his dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom from generation to generation. All the inhabitants of the earth are counted as nothing, and he does what he wants with the army of heaven and the inhabitants of the earth. There is no one who can block his hand or say to him, what have you done? At that time my sanity returned to me, and my majesty and splendor returned to me for the glory of my kingdom. My advisors and my nobles sought me out, and I was reestablished over my kingdom, and even more my greatness came to me. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise, exalt, and glorify the King of heaven, because all the works are true and his ways are just. He is able to humble those who walk in pride. Chapter 5. King Belteshazzar held a great feast for 1,000 of his nobles and drank wine in his presence. Under the influence of the wine, Belteshazzar gave orders to bring in the gold and silver vessels that his predecessor Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the temple in Jerusalem, so that the king and his noble wives and concubines could drink from them. So they brought in the gold vessels that had been taken from the temple, the house of God in Jerusalem. And the king and his noble wives and concubines drank from them. They drank the wine and praised their gods made of gold and silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. At that moment, the finger of a man's hand appeared and began writing on the plaster of the king's palace wall next to the lampstand. As the king watched the hand that was writing, his face turned pale, and his thoughts so terrified him that he soiled himself and his knees knocked together. The king shouted to bring in mediums, Chaldeans, and diviners. He said to these wise men of Babylon, whoever reads this inscription and gives me its interpretation will be clothed in purple, have a gold chain around his neck, and have the third highest position in the kingdom. So all the king's wise men came in, but none could read the inscription or make its interpretation known to him. Then King Belteshazzar became even more terrified. His face turned pale, and his nobles were bewildered. Because of the outcry of the king and his nobles, the queen came to the banquet hall. May the king live forever, she said. Don't let your thoughts terrify you or your face be pale. There is a man in your kingdom who has the spirit of the holy gods in him. In the days of your predecessor, he was found to have insight, intelligence, and wisdom like the wisdom of gods. Your predecessor, King Nebuchadnezzar, appointed him chief of the magicians, mediums, and Chaldeans, and diviners. Your own predecessor, the king, did this because Daniel, the one the king named Belteshazzar, was found to have an extraordinary spirit, knowledge, and intelligence, and ability to interpret dreams, explain riddles, and solve problems. Therefore, summon Daniel, and he will give the interpretation. Then Daniel was brought before the king, and the king said to him, Are you Daniel, the one of the Judeans exiled from the predecessor, the king brought from Judah? I've heard that you have a spirit of the gods in you, and that insight, intelligence, and extraordinary wisdom has found in you. Now the wise men and the mediums were brought before me to read this inscription and make its interpretation known to me, but they could not give its interpretation. However, I have heard about you that you can give interpretations and solve problems. Therefore, if you can read this inscription and give me its interpretation, you will be clothed in purple, have a gold chain around your neck, and have the third highest position in the kingdom. Then Daniel answered the king, You may keep your gifts and give your rewards to someone else. However, I will read the inscription for the king and make the interpretation known to him. Your majesty, the Most High God, gave sovereignty, greatness, glory, and majesty to your predecessor Nebuchadnezzar. Because of the greatness he gave him, all people, nations, languages were terrified and fearful of him. He killed anyone he wanted and kept alive anyone he wanted. He exalted anyone he wanted, humbled anyone he wanted. But when his heart was exalted and his spirit became arrogant, he was disposed from his royal throne and his glory was taken from him. He was driven away from people. His mind was like an animal's. He lived with the wild donkeys. He was fed grass like the cattle. And his body was drenched with dew from the sky until they acknowledged the Most High God is ruler over human kingdoms and set anyone he wants over them. But you, his successor Belteshazzar, have not humbled your heart, even though you knew all this. Instead, you have exalted yourself against the Lord of the heaven. The vessels from the house were brought to you and your nobles' wives and concubines drank wine from them. You praised the gods made of silver, gold, and bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which do not see or hear or understand. But you have not glorified the God who holds your life breath in his hand and who controls the whole course of your life. Therefore, he sent the hand, and this writing was inscribed. This is the writing that was inscribed, Mene Tekel Parsin. This is the interpretation of the message. Mene means that God has numbered the days of your kingdom and brought it to an end. Tekel means that you have been weighed on the balance and found deficient. Perez means that your kingdom has been divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. Then Belteshazzar gave an order, and they clothed Daniel in purple and placed a gold chain around his neck and issued a proclamation concerning him that he should be the third ruler of the kingdom. That very night, Belteshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, was killed, and Darius the Mede received the kingdom at the age of 62. Chapter 6. Darius decided to appoint 120 satraps over the kingdom, stationed throughout the realm, and over them 3 administrators, including Daniel. These satraps would be accountable to them so that the king would not be defrauded. Daniel distinguished himself above the administrators and satraps because he had an extraordinary spirit. So the king planned to set him over the whole realm. The administrators and the satraps therefore kept trying to find a charge against Daniel regarding the kingdom. But they could not find no charge or corruption, for he was trustworthy, and no negligence or corruption was found in him. Then these men said, "We will never find any charge against this Daniel unless we find something against him concerning the law of his God." So the administrator and the satraps went together to the king and said to him, "May King Darius live forever." All the administrators of the kingdom, the prefects, the satraps, and the advisors and governors have agreed that the king should establish an ordinance and enforce an edict for 30 days. Anyone who petitions any god or man except you, the king will thrown into the lion's den. Therefore, your majesty, establish the edict and sign the document as the law of Medes and the Persians. It is irrevocable and cannot be changed. So King Darius signed the written edict. When Daniel learned that the document had been signed, he went into his house. The windows in his upstairs room opened toward Jerusalem, and 3 times a day he got down on his knees, prayed, and gave thanks to his God, just as he had done before. Then these men went in as a group and found Daniel petitioning and imploring his God. So they approached the king and asked about his edict. "Didn't you assign an edict for 30 days any person who petitioned any god or man except you, the king will thrown into the lion's den?" The king answered, "As the law of the Medes and Persians an order stands and is irrevocable." Then they replied to the king, "Daniel, one of the Judean exiles, has ignored you, the king, and the edict you signed, for he has prayed 3 times a day." As soon as the king heard this, he was very displeased. He set his mind on rescuing Daniel and made every effort until sun to deliver him. Then these men went together to the king and said to him, "You know, your majesty, that it is the law of the Medes and Persians that no edict or ordinance the king established can be changed." So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him in the lion's den. The king said to Daniel, "May your God, whom you continually serve, rescue you." A stone was brought and they're placed over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and with his signet ring of the nobles, so that nothing regarding Daniel could be changed. Then the king went to his palace and spent the night fasting. No diversions were brought to him. Sorry. So the king gave the order. They brought Daniel and threw him in the lion's den. The king said to Daniel, "May your God, whom you continually serve, rescue you." A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den. The king sealed it and his own signet ring with his signet ring of his nobles, so that nothing regarding Daniel could be changed. Then the king went to his palace, spent the night fasting. No diversions were brought to him, and he could not sleep. At the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. When he reached the den, he cried out in anguish to Daniel, "Daniel, servant of the living God." The king said, "Has your God, whom you continually serve, been able to rescue you from the lions?" Then Daniel spake with the king, "May the king live forever. My God sent his angels to shut the lions' mouths, and they haven't harmed me. For I was found innocent before him and also before you. Your majesty, I have not done harm." The king was overjoyed, gave orders to take Daniel out of the den. When Daniel was brought up out of the den, he was found to be unharmed, for he had trusted in his God. The king then gave the command, and those men who were maliciously accused Daniel were brought and thrown into the lion's den. They, their children, and their wives had not reached the bottom of the den before the lions overpowered them and crushed all their bones. Then the king of Darius wrote to those of every people, of nation, and language who lived on the whole earth, "May your prosperity abound. I issue a decree that in all my royal dominion people must tremble in fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed, and his dominion has no end. He rescues and delivers. He performs signs and wonders in the heaven and on the earth, for he has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions." So Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Chapter 7. In the first year of King Belteshazzar of Babylon, Daniel had a dream with visions in his mind, and he was lying in his bed. He wrote down the dream, and here is the summary of his account. Daniel said, "In my vision at night I was watching, and suddenly the four winds of heaven stirred up the great sea. 4 huge beasts came up from the sea, each different from the other. The first was like a lion, but had eagle's wings. I continued watching until its wings were torn off. It was lifted up from the ground, set on its feet like a man, and given a human mind. Suddenly another beast appeared, a second one, that looked like a bear. It was raised up on one side with 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. It was told, 'Get up, gorge yourself on flesh.' After this, while I was watching, and suddenly another beast appeared. It was like a leopard with 4 wings of a bird on its back. It had 4 heads, and it was given dominion. After this, while I was watching in the night vision, suddenly a 4th beast appeared, frightening and dreadful, incredibly strong with large iron teeth. It devoured and crushed, and it trampled with its feet whatever was left. It was different from all the beasts before, and it had 10 horns. While I was considering the horns, suddenly another horn, a little one, came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were uprooted before it, And suddenly in this horn there were eyes like the eyes of a human, and a mouth that was speaking arrogantly. As I kept watching, the thrones were set in place, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His clothing was white like snow, and the hair of his head like whitest wool. His throne was flaming fire. Its wheels were blazing fire. A river of fire was flowing, coming out from its presence. Thousands upon thousands served him. 10,000s and times 10,000 stood before him. The court was convened, and the books were opened. I watched then because of the sound of the arrogant words the horn was speaking. As I continued watching, the beast was killed, and its body destroyed and given over to the burning fire. As for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was removed, but an extension of life was granted to them for a certain period of time. I continued watching in the night visions, and suddenly one like a son of man was coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was escorted before him. He was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, so that those of every people, nation, and language should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will not be destroyed. As for me, Daniel, my spirit was deeply distressed within me, and the vision in my mind terrified me. I approached one of those who were standing by and asked him to clarify all this, so he let me know the interpretation of these things. These huge beasts, 4 in number, and 4 kings who will rise from the earth, but the holy ones of the Most High will receive the kingdom and possess it forever. Yes, forever and ever. Then I wanted to be clear about the 4th beast, the one different from all the others, extremely terrifying, with iron teeth and bronze claws, devouring, crushing, and trampling with its feet whatever was left. I also wanted to know about the 10 horns on its head and about the other horn that came up before which these 3 fell. The horn that had eyes and a mouth that spoke arrogantly and that looked bigger than the other. As I was watching, this horn waged war against the holy ones and was prevailing over them, until the Ancient of Days arrived and a judgment was given in favor of the holy ones of the Most High. For the time had come, and the holy ones took possession of the kingdom. This is what he said: the 4th beast will be a 4th kingdom on the earth, different from all the other kingdoms. It will devour the whole earth, trample it down, and crush it. The 10 horns are 10 kings who will rise from this kingdom. Another king different from the previous one will rise after them and subdue 3 kings. He will speak words against the Most High and oppress the holy ones of the Most High. He will intend to change religious festivals and laws, and the holy ones will be handed over to him for a time, times and a half a times. But the court will convene, and his dominion will be taken away to be completely destroyed forever. The kingdom, dominion, and greatness of the kingdoms under all of heaven will be given to the people. And the holy ones of the Most High, his kingdom will be an everlasting kingdom, and all the rulers will be given serve and obey him. This is the end of the account. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts terrified me greatly, and my face turned pale, but I kept the matter to myself. Chapter 8. In the 3rd year of King Belteshazzar's reign, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, after the one that appeared to me earlier. I saw the vision, and as I watched, I was in the fortress of the city of Susa, in the province of Elam. I saw a vision that was beside the Ulai Canal. I looked up, and there was a ram standing beside the canal. He had 2 horns. The 2 horns were long, but one was longer than the other. and the longer one came up last. I saw the ram charging to the west and the north and the south. No animal could give stand against him, and there was no rescue from his power. He did whatever he wanted and became great. As I was observing, a male goat appeared coming from the west across the substance of the entire earth. Without touching the ground, the goat had conspicuous horn between his eyes. He came toward the two-horned ram. I had been standing beside the canal and rushed at him with savage fury. I saw him approaching the ram. Infuriated with him, he struck the ram, breaking his two horns, and the ram was not strong enough to stand against him. The goat threw him to the ground and trampled him, and there was no one to rescue the ram from his power. Then the male goat acted even more arrogantly, but when he became powerful, the large horn was broken. Four conspicuous horns came up to its place, pointing toward the four winds of heaven. From one of them, a little horn emerged and grew extensively toward the south and east and toward the beautiful land. It grew as high as the heavenly army, made some of the army and some of the stars fall to the earth and trampled them. It acted arrogantly even against the prince of heavenly army. It revoked its regular sacrifice and overthrew the place of his sanctuary. In the rebellion, the army was given up together with the regular sacrifice. The horn threw truth to the ground and was successful in what it did. Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to the speaker, "How long will the events of this vision last?" The regular sacrifice, the rebellion that makes desolate, and the giving over of the sanctuary and of the army to be trampled. He said to me, for 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary will be restored. When I, Daniel, was watching the vision and trying to understand it, there stood before me someone who appeared to be a man. I heard a human voice calling from the middle of the Ulai. Gabriel explained the vision to this man. So he approached where I was standing, and when he came to me, I was terrified and fell face down. "Son of man," he said to me, "understand that the vision refers to the time of the end." While he was speaking to me, I fell into a deep sleep with my face to the ground. Then he touched me, made me stand up, and I said, "I am here to tell you what will happen at the conclusion of the time of wrath, because it refers to the appointed time of the end." The two-horned ram that you saw represents the king of Media and Persia. The shaggy goat represents the king of Greece, and the large horn between his eyes represents the first king. The four horns that took the place of the broken horn represents four kingdoms that will rise from the nation, but without its power. Near the end of their kingdoms, when the rebels have reached the full measure of their sin, a ruthless king, skilled in intrigue, will come to be thrown. His power will be great, but it will not be his own. He will cause outrage, destruction, and succeed in whatever he does. He will destroy the powerful along with the holy people. He will cause deceit to prosper through his cunning and by his influence. In his own mind, he will exalt himself. He will destroy many in a time of peace. He will stand against the prince of princes. Yet he will be broken not by human hands. The vision of the evening and the morning that has been told is true. Now you are to seal up the vision because it refers to many days in the future. I, Daniel, was overcome and lay sick for 4 days. Then I got up and went about the king's business. I was greatly disturbed by the vision and could not understand.
How you doing, brother? Chapter 9? All right. You're more than welcome. Thank you. Huh? Yeah. We're going to have service. We're going to have something. Pastor said it's going to be a surprise. Be careful. Good day. It's warm. In the first year of Darius, the sons of Ahasuerus and Mede by birth, who was made king over Chaldean's kingdom, in the first year of the reign, I, Daniel, understood from the book according to the word of the Lord to the prophet of Jeremiah that the number of years in desolation of Jerusalem would be 70. That's loud. So I turned my attention to the Lord God to seek him, and by my prayer and petitions with fasting, sackcloth, and ashes, I prayed to my Lord, my God, and confessed, Lord, the great and all-in spiriting God, who keeps the gracious covenant with those who love him and keep his commands. We have sinned, done wrong, and acted wickedly, rebelled, and turned away from your commandments and ordinances. We have not listened to your servants, the prophets who spoke in your name to the kings and leaders and ancestors and all the people of the land. Lord, righteousness belongs to you, but this day public shame belongs to us, the men of Judah and the residents of Jerusalem and Israel, those who are near and those who are far, in the countries where you have banished them because of this loyalty they have shown towards you. Lord, public shame belongs to us, our kings, our leaders, and our ancestors, because we have sinned against you. Compassion and forgiveness belongs to the Lord, our God. Though we have rebelled against him, and we have not obeyed the Lord our God by following his instructions that he set before us through his servants, the prophets, all Israel has broken your law, and we turned away, refusing to obey you. The promised curse written in the law of Moses, the servant of God, has been poured out into us because we have sinned against him. He carried out his words that spoke against us and against our rulers by bringing us to this disaster that is so great that nothing like what has been done to Jerusalem has ever been done under all the heavens. Just as it is written in the law of Moses, all this disaster has come to us, yet we have not sought the favor of the Lord our God by turning from our iniquities and paying attention to your youth. So the Lord kept the disaster in mind and brought it to us. For the Lord our God is righteous in all that he has done, but we have not obeyed him. Now, Lord our God, who brought your people out of the land of Egypt with a strong hand and made your name renowned as it is this day, we have sinned, we have acted wickedly. Lord, in keeping with all your righteous acts, may your anger and wrath turn away from your city of Jerusalem, your holy mountain. For because of our sins and our iniquities of our ancestors, Jerusalem, your people, have become an object of ridicule to all those around us. Therefore, our God, hear the prayer and the petitions of your servant. Make your face shine on your desolated sanctuary for the Lord's sake. Listen closely, my God, and hear. Open your eyes and see the desolation of the city that bears your name. For we are not presenting our possessions before you based on our righteous acts, but based on your abundant compassion. Lord, hear. Lord, forgive. Lord, listen and act. My God, For your own sake, do not delay, because your city and your people bear your name. 17 weeks of years. While I was speaking and praying, confessing my sins and sins to my people Israel, and presenting my petition before the Lord my God concerning the holy mountain of my God. While I was praying, Gabriel, the man I had seen in the first vision, reached me in my extreme weariness about the time of evening offering. He gave me an explanation. Daniel, I've come now to give you understanding. At the beginning of your petitions, an answer went out, and I have come to give it. You are treasured by God. So consider the message and understand the vision. 70 weeks are decreed about your people and your holy city, to bring the rebellion to an end and to stop to sin, to atone for the iniquity and bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up visions of prophecy and anoint the most holy place. Know that the understanding of this, from issuing of this decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the anointed one and one ruler and the ruler will be 70 weeks and 62 weeks. It will be rebuilt with the plaza and moat, but in difficult times. After those 62 weeks, the anointed one will be cut off and will have nothing. The people of coming to ruler will destroy the city and the sanctuary. The end will come with flood, and until the end there will be war, desolations, and decreed. He will make firm covenant with many for 1 week. But in the middle of the week, he will put a stop to sacrifice and offering. And the abomination and desolation will be on a wing of the temple until the decreed destruction is poured out to the desolator. Chapter 10. In the third year, the king of Cyrus of Persia, a message was revealed to Daniel, who was named Belteshazzar. The message was one of true and was about a great conflict. He understood the message and had an understanding of the vision. In those days, I, Daniel, was mourning for 3 full weeks. I didn't eat any rich food, no meal or wine entered my mouth. I didn't put any oil on my body until the 3 weeks were over. On the 24th day, the first month, as I was standing at the bank of a great river, the Tigris, I looked up, and there was a man dressed in linen with a belt of gold from Uphaz around his waist. His body was like a beryl. His face was like brilliance of lightning, his eyes shining, his eyes like flaming torches, his arms and feet, the gleam, the polished bronze, and the sound of his words like sounds of multitude. Only I, Daniel, saw the vision. The men who were with me did not see it, but a great terror fell upon them, and they ran and hid. I was left alone, looking at this great vision. No strength was left in me. My face grew deathly pale, and I was powerless. I heard the words he said, and when I heard them, I fell to a deep sleep with my face upon the ground. Suddenly the hand touched me and set me shaking on my hands and knees. He said to me, Daniel, you are a man treasured by God. Understand the words that I am saying to you. Stand on your feet, for I have now been sent to you. After he said this to me, I stood trembling. Don't be afraid, Daniel, he said to me, for from the first day that you proposed to understand and humbled yourself before your God, your prayers we heard. I have come because of your prayers, but the prince of the kingdom of Persia opposes me. For 21 days, then Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me after he had been left there with him and the king of Persia. Now I have come to help you understand what will happen to your people in the last days. The vision refers to those days. While he was saying these words to me, I turned my face towards the ground and was speechless. Suddenly, someone with human likeness touched my lips. I opened my mouth and said to the one standing in front of me, my Lord, because the vision anguish overwhelms me and I am powerless, how can someone like me, your servant, speak with someone like you, my Lord? Now I have no strength and there is no breath in me. Then the one with a human appearance touched me again and strengthened me. He said, don't be afraid. You who are treasured by God, peace to you. Be very strong. As he spoke to me, I was strengthened and said, let my Lord speak, for you have strengthened me. He said, do you know why I've come to you? I must return at once the flight against the prince of Persia, and when I have, the prince of Greece will come. However, I will tell you what is in record in the book of truth, that no one has the courage to support against those princes except Michael, your prince. In the first years of Darius the Mede, I stood up to strengthen and protect him. Now I will tell you the truth. 3 more kings will arise in Persia, and the 4th will be far richer than all the others. By the power he gains through his riches, he will stir up everyone against the kingdom of Greece. Then a warrior king will arise. He will rule a vast realm and do whatever he wants. But as soon as he is established, his kingdom will be broken up and divided to 4 winds of heaven, but not to his descendants. It will not be the same kingdom that he ruled, because his kingdom will be uprooted and will go to others besides them. The king of the south will grow powerful, but one of his commanders will grow even more powerful and will rule the kingdom greater than his. After some years, they will form an alliance, and the daughter of the king of the south will go to the king of the north to seal an agreement. She will not retain the power, and the strength will not endure. She will be given up together with her entourage, her father, and the one who supported her during those times. In the place of the king of the south, one of her family will arise up, come against the army, enter the fortress of the king of the north, and he will take action against them and triumph. He will take even their gods captives to Egypt, with their metal images and their precious articles of silver and gold. For some years he will stay away from the king of the north, who will enter the kingdom of the king of the south, and then return his own land. His sons will mobilize for war and assemble large numbers of armed forces. They will advance, sweeping like a flood, and will again wage war as far as the fortress. In fury, the king of the south will march out and to fight the king of the north, and will arise in a large army, but they will be handed over to his enemies. When the army is carried off, he will become arrogant as to cause tens and thousands to fall, but he will not triumph. You ready to read, sister? Would you want to come read? What time are you going to read? 3 o'clock? The king of the north will arise, a multitude larger than the first. After some years, he will advance with a great army to the many supplies. In those times, many will rise up against the king of the south, violent ones among your own people, and assert themselves to fulfill a vision, but they will fall. The king of the north will come, build up a siege ramp, and capture well-fortified city. The forces of the south will not stand. Even their select troops will not be able to resist. The king of the north who comes against him will do whatever he wants, and no one can oppose him. He will establish himself in the beautiful land with the total destruction in his hand. He will resolve to come to the force of one of his whole kingdoms and will reach an agreement with them. He will give him away to his daughter in marriage to destroy it, but she will not stand with him or support him. Then he will turn his attention to the coasts of the islands and capture many, but the commander will put an end to his taunting instead. He will turn his taunts against him. He will turn his attention back to the fortress of his homeland, but he will stumble and fall and be no more. In his place, one will arise who will send out a tax collector for the glory of the kingdom. But within a few days he will be broken, though not in anger, but in battle. In his place, a despised person will arise. Royal honors will no longer be given to him, but he will come during the time of peace and seize the kingdom by intrigue. A flood of forces will be swept away before him. There will be broken as well as a covenant of the priests. After an alliance is made with them, he will act deceitfully. He will arise to power with a small nation. During a time of peace, he will come into the richest parts of the province and do what his fathers and his predecessors never did. He will lavish plunder, loot, and wealth on the followers, and he will make plans against the fortified cities, but only for a time. With a large army, he will stir up his power and his courage against the king of the south. The king of the south will prepare for battle with an extremely large and powerful army, but he will not succeed because plots will be made against him. Those who eat the provisions will destroy his armies, will be swept away, and many will fall and slain. The two kings whose hearts are bent on evil will speak lies in the same table, but to no avail, for still the end will come at the appointed time. The kingdom of the north will return his land and the great wealth, but his heart will be set against the holy covenant. He will take action, then return to his own land. At the appointed time, he will come again to the south, but this time will not be like the first. Ships of Kedem will come against him, and being intimidated, he will withdraw. Then he will rage against the holy covenant and take action. On his return, he will favor those who abandon the holy covenant. His forces will arise and desecrate the temples of fortress. They will abolish the regular sacrifice and set up an abomination of desolation. With flattery, he will corrupt those who act wickedly towards the covenant. But the people who know their God will be strong and take action. Those who have insight among the people will give an understanding to many. Yet they will fall by the sword and flame, and they will be captured and plundered for a time. When they fall, they will be helped by some, but many others will join them insincerely. Some of those who have insight will fall so they might be refined and purified and cleansed until the time of the end. For I will still come to the appointed time. The king will do whatever he wants. He will exalt and magnify himself above every god. And he will say outrageous things against the gods of gods. He will be successful until the time of wrath is complete, because what has been decreed will be accomplished. He will not show a regard for gods of his ancestors. The God desires whom by women or any other god, because he will magnify himself above all. Instead, he will honor a god fortress, a god his ancestors did not know, with gold and silvers and precious stones and riches. He will deal with the strongest fortress with the help of a foreign god. He will greatly honor those with acknowledgement of him, making them rulers over many and distributing land as a reward. At the time of the end of the king of the south, they will engage him in battle, but the king of the north will storm against him with chariots, horsemen, and many ships. He will invade countries and sweep through them like a flood. He will also invade the beautiful lands, and many will fall. But these will escape from his power: Edom, Moab, and prominent people of the Ammonites. He will extend his power against the countries, and not even the land of Egypt will escape. He will get control over the hidden treasures of the gods in silver and over all riches of Egypt. The Lebanons and the Cushites will also be in submission. With their great fury, the Amalekites will be completely destroyed. Many he will pitch in his royal tents between the sea and his beautiful holy mountain, but will meet his end with no one to help them. Okay. Chapter 12. I get all into it, Maria. This is the good, easy reading part of it. Dan, give me a hand. Go ahead. We're on chapter 12. If you want to stand, if you want to sit. Daniel chapter 12 right now. Here, I just use this as a guide.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Microphone? Do you want me to put the mic on the mic, or do you want to hold it?
No.
Okay. You want to hold it? You want to put it here? Put it in the holder? Okay. Go ahead.
Now, do I need to say Daniel 12 or not? Just start reading.
You can tell them if those who are following on. Daniel chapter 12.
Okay, this is Daniel 12. At this time, Michael is the great princess who stands watch over your people will rise up. There will be a time of distress such as never has occurred since nation came into being until that time. But at that time, all your people who are found written in the book will escape. Many who slept in the dust of the earth will awake, some eternal life and some to disgrace the eternal content. Those who have insight will shine like the bright expanse of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. But you, Daniel, will keep these words secret and seal the book until the time of the end. Many will roam about, and knowledge will increase. Then I, Daniel, look at two others who were standing there, one on the banks of the river and one on the other. One of them said to the man dressed in linen, who was above the water of the river, "How long until the end of these wondrous things?" Then I heard the man dressed in linen, who was above the water of the river. He raised both his hands towards the heavens and swore by him who lives eternal that it would be for a time, times and half times. I got my key. When the powers of the Holy Spirit is shattered, All these things will complete. I heard, but did not understand. So I asked my Lord, what will be overcome of these things? He said, go on your way, Daniel, for the words are secret and sealed until the end of time. Many will purify, cleanse, and refine, but the wicked will act wicked. None of the wicked will understand, but those who have insight will understand. From the time the daily sacrifice is abandoned and the abundance of destroyed is set up, there will be 1,290 days. Happy is the one who waits for and reaches for 1,335 days. But as far for you, go on your way to the end. You will rest, and then you will rise to receive your allotment inheritance at the end of the day. That's the end of that chapter. We got Hosea. Verse 1, the word of the Lord that comes in Hosea, the son of Beerus, during the region of Uzziah, Althana, Ahava, Hezekiah, king of Judah, or Jeroboam, son of Jehoahaz, king of Israel. When the Lord first spoke to Hosea, he asked him to go and marry a woman of Persisity and have children of promise, and the island is commended blankets acts of proceedings by abandoning the Lord. So he went and married Gomer, daughter of Dalian, and she conceived and bore him a son. Then the Lord said to him, name him Jeruziah. In a little while I will bring the bloodshed of Jeruziah on the house of the Jew and put an end to the king of the house of Israel. On that day I will break the bows of Israel in Jerusalem's valley. She conceived again and gave birth to a daughter, and the Lord said to him, name her Lo-Ruhamah, for I will no longer have compassion on the house of Israel. I will certainly take them away. But I will have compassion on the house of Judah, and I will deliver them by the Lord their God. I will not deliver them by bow, sword, or war, or by horse, cavalry. After Gomer was learned Lo-Ruhamah, she conceived and gave birth to a son. Then the Lord said, name him Lo-Ruhamah, for you are not people, and I will not be your God. Yet the number of Israelites will be like the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured or counted. And in the place where they were told, you are not my people, they will be called sons of the living God. And the Judas and the Israelites will be gathered together. They will appoint for themselves a single ruler and go up from the land, for the days of Jerusalem will be great. Call your brother, my people, your sister, compassion. Rebuke your mother, rebuke her,